Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thanks for being on with us today. This is Emily Cook. I am the Collaborative Learning and STEM Specialist with Troxel CDI. We're so excited to have you here. So as you know, eSports is a really exciting area in educational technology, and we are so excited to be partnered with Josh Kell from eSports Integration. He and eSports Integration are really at the forefront of implementing district and university-wide esports programs. So he's going to introduce us today to some of the current trends, some things to consider when building out a program, and how esports integration and Troxel CDI can help support you as you do that. So during the presentation, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to send them over in the chat box or in the questions to me, and I'll kind of keep track of those. And we've saved a little bit of time at the end so that we can review those questions together and talk through them. So thanks again for being here, and I will hand it over to Josh at this point.
Thank you, Emily. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are across the country. We thank you so much for joining this webinar. This is something that we're really excited about. We have been working with Troxel CDI for over 20 years, helping develop audiovisual elements as Horizon AVL, that is the parent company. And about 2 years ago, I had, as CEO, made a conscious effort to develop a division dedicated to esports. I have esports background from a competition standpoint. I played Counter-Strike semi-professionally in 2003, 2004. And so it is a passion of mine. It is a love of mine that I just enjoy so much. So I took that passion and also audiovisual and brought it together. But we didn't want to just stop from the audiovisual standpoint, looking at the industry. And that's the big word that we want to focus on as we're talking through this esports webinar is industry. What is the industry doing? How are we preparing? But we wanted to focus on developing a pathway for students for the industry. And we have actually some really new statistics that came out that we're really excited sort of to share. We don't have them in the slides yet, but I'm going to run through some of those statistics of what that looks like from an industry standpoint and a career standpoint. So the first question that we sort of ask is really, what is esports? And what does this word mean? We hear this hype. We hear a lot of talk around this. Working right now with over 130, almost 140 colleges and universities across the U.S., developing the program on what esports is. So let me break down the definition of esports. So esports is competitive video game play where two teams or two players, multiple players, opposing each other are looking towards a common goal of a victor at the end, right? As in traditional sports, right? When you look at the definition of sports itself, and when we break that word down, and when we look in the Webster Dictionary of what the defining word of sports is, it is a form of entertainment, right? We recently had the Super Bowl. We weren't playing, we were watching two teams as a form of entertainment, rooting for them, excited for one or the other. Or if you were just, even if they weren't your favorite teams, you just may be enjoying that with friends and so forth, gathering together and watching a game. Esports is the electronic version of that. In fact, to give you guys an idea of what that looks like at a large scale, it's a bunch of community people that enjoy playing video games and watching their teams get together in large arenas and play. Now, while the first thing we see are the players on the stage and the thousands of people watching, there's so much more to this picture from an industry standpoint. And so when we look at the word sports and it being a form of entertainment, there's also a level of skill required. These two teams are communicating with each other or within the team itself, right? What abilities or moves or the process of where the game is within the round. And so there's a level of strategy that's involved, what character you're picking, what abilities that are going to be had as the round progresses. But the other thing that we want to show in this picture is the down on the bottom, you see the color, the commentating, you see the play-by-play, you see the front of house. This is the Dota 2 International this particular competition. And you see the camera operators, the front of house. But what you don't see when it comes to industry is the 30 to 40 people that are in the back room running the broadcast, that are running the stream, that are monitoring all the social media elements, that are marketing and advertising and planning through that whole process. And then there's another room of about 20 to 30 other individuals that are running the network, making sure the stream is up, making sure the VLANs are done properly, make sure the traffic is properly routed across the globe. And so this is a picture of what industry looks like when it comes to esports. Now, I want to step back a little bit in time now that we've sort of looked at that, and I want to sort of go over the history of esports. And there are 3 iterations that we generally look at, right? There are a lot of steps along the way, but there are 3 iterations. The first one, late 70s, early 80s, early mid 80s, consoles are coming home, right? Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Atari, Genesis, these are coming home. At this time, I'm in middle school, going through playing video games with friends, going over the houses. We're coming together, playing hours of NBA Jam, a basketball game, where we're doing tournaments. Now, it's not called esports at this time, while there are some competitions that exist, but from Nintendo in the mid to late 80s. But it's not coined esports. Then moving along to the late 90s, LAN play is introduced. This is where games like Counter-Strike, this is where games like Counter-Strike come into play, Unreal Tournament, Quake, etc., Sony PlayStation Online. These level of elements are coming into play where at college rooms, college dorm rooms, we're building LAN parties, we're strategizing together. I'm in college at this particular time, and we're seeing this growth of this strategy level of gameplay, dorm room versus dorm room sort of competition that's happening. And now we're sort of in our 3rd iteration, where there are more people spectating than there are people playing at a professional level. And to give you guys an idea of what that looks like, League of Legends in 2018 had over 78 million people watch it live. That is more than the NBA and the NHL combined in that same year in their finals. It is more than that this year, or this past year in 2019. It's over 100 million viewers. We are reaching Super Bowl numbers at this point as far as viewership is concerned. So this is a growing industry from a spectator standpoint. Now, to give you guys a little bit of idea of demographics that are happening out there and some statistics that are happening, viewers who watch esports, 79% of them are 35 and under. And that is really giving us a good idea of what is happening to the professional sporting industry. A lot of those individuals are now watching esports than traditional sports itself. In fact, to give you an idea of a combined consumed amount of content on Twitch and YouTube, more content is being consumed on these 2 platforms than Netflix, HBO, and ESPN combined. That's everything ESPN. That's ESPN 1, 2, Classic, all their streaming services, all of HBO's online content, and Netflix content itself. This is showing us that the demographic and this generation is consuming more content on these platforms. They don't pick up a remote control and watch television. Those days are slowly going away. We're hearing more and more people cut the cable, right? They're cutting their connection to cable providers. And cable providers are waking up to that, and they're starting very strong on their streaming services. And they're hitting that very, very, very hard. Now, the one thing that we want to talk about is the industry, right? That is the word that we want to focus on as we're going through this. What is the esports industry and what's it looking like? And how should we start preparing? So I want to give you sort of a snapshot of 2 industries that are both entertainment in form, right? Gaming, esports, one of them. And then the film and the music industry. The film and the music industry, we have curriculum on. We have programs. We have a process for that already. So what we've done is we've taken a snapshot of the past 10 years from 2008 to 2018 to show the overall industry growth. And so when we look at gaming and esports last year, or in 2018, we're seeing it's over double the film and music industry in the billions. That's revenue measured in the billions. That's a $60 billion film and music industry to a $135 billion esports and gaming industry. And this is one of the statistics that we're adding in right now. But there was, from 2018 to 2019, over 200% increase in jobs created for the esports industry right now. There are jobs that are in the thousands. There's over 5,000 jobs in 2019 as compared to 2018, over a 200% increase. And we're seeing more and more of this industry growing year over year. But what are we doing to prepare? Not only from a gaming perspective side, because often what we hear in this particular space is we want to start esports. We want to bring esports onto campus or to our school district. But what does that look like? When we go back and look at the definition of esports, competitive video game, sure, that's one aspect of it. But remember, industry is wrapped around that. When we look at football, basketball at a professional level, NFL, NBA, we instantly look at the players, right? The team, we associate with that. But the basketball industry or the football industry is massive. There's sports management, there's understanding of health regimen, there's social media, there's broadcast, there's media, there's all forms of advertising that exist. The football industry is massive, but the first thing we see are the players. And so when we look at esports, we want to look at it through that same lens. We want to be able to look at it and say, we can identify the professional players and the team that exists. But what is the industry that is wrapped around esports, and how can we support that from a career path? Just to give you guys a little bit of idea of esports revenue specific from more specifically prize money and sponsorship, we sort of take a snapshot and a compare and a potential of what can happen this year in 2020. So if we look at last year, over 1.1 billion in revenue. Now that's a combination of tournament winnings, of sponsorships that exist out there, of teams that are being built and being funded. So there's a lot of different metrics inside that from a revenue standpoint. But 2020, we've seen everything from 1.8 billion up to 2.5 billion of what the esports industry is going to look like this year. And we're going to conservatively stay around 1.8 from that perspective. But one thing that we just talked about was the tournament prize money. And I want to break that down and what that looks like. The top 3 tournaments by prize money, the international, that is the Dota 2 international. That first picture that we showed with the thousands of people in an arena watching, that was a $25 million prize purse. League of Legends World Championship, 6.5, and Fortnite Skirmish, 4 million. We probably have all heard, or to some capacity, of the 16-year-old in Pennsylvania who won $3 million for the Fortnite championship. And so this is a massive amount of revenue that is being won out there, and it's a growing industry from that perspective. But I want to talk a little bit about the grassroots of the industry as well. And to give you guys an idea, there was a competition in 2016, 2017 on a game called Heroes of the Storm. It's 5 players versus 5 players. And there was a competition by Blizzard Entertainment, the maker of the game, called Heroes of the Dorm. It involved over 400 high schools or 400 colleges and universities across the U.S. Out of those 400 colleges and universities, 90% of the teams that were participating were unaware that they had a team participating. The school had no idea about their participation. They had no idea about esports. They had no idea they had a club or a team or even what this was looking like. That team that walked away that year as the victor won a full ride scholarship from Blizzard Entertainment to the university or college that they were competing in at that time. So this statistic is showing us that this generation and this culture is going to game whether we like it or not, right? Whether we embrace it or push it away, they are still going to gravitate towards it because it is their pastime, right? It is what they deem as a form of entertainment. It is their sense of community. It is their next level of entertainment and sporting. And so we want to embrace that. We want to go through the process of what that looks like, to embrace that, to help them in the career and as the jobs are being produced. And so what's really interesting is I'm from Philadelphia. Our headquarters are just outside of Philadelphia. And in Philadelphia, we are getting the first ground up arena. There are other arenas that exist, like the eSports Stadium in Arlington, Texas, or the Luxor eSports Arena in Vegas. And eSports Arena also has several in California as well. But these arenas are becoming more and more popular, and to the effect now that Comcast is investing into a $50 million building dedicated to esports. And if you sort of see the landscape, this is in the heart of the sporting complex in Philadelphia. The Citizens Bank Park is in the background, also the Link where the Eagles play. This is in the heart of the sporting complex because Comcast understands that this is a massive industry that they're invested in. They see the trends, they see what this generation is gravitating towards, and the culture is moving towards, and they're building an arena that is dedicated to esports. Now, it's a smaller arena in size. It's only 3,500 individuals around that it's going to fit. That's because they know that the mass majority of people who enjoy watching competitions are watching it on Twitch, YouTube Gaming, Mixer, Caffeine, these other streaming protocols that exist. So Comcast Spectacor really is investing a lot from the professional sense of the industry itself. So let's talk a little bit about our mission. Our mission with Troxel CDI and ourselves. So our mission is to help design programs, to help build the facility, build the team, build the programs and curriculum, and then to obviously in turn will help you compete in the space. And in order to do that, we have developed a roadmap. And this is probably one of the most important aspects of this presentation. This is what we walk through with all of our clients. It's a 5-step program. One, we help define your mission for esports. What does it look like? Is it a club? Are we looking at a potential of varsity in a few years? What leagues? Or is this just going to be something like gaming? So we need to define the difference between the two. Esports is the competitive element. Gaming is the casual. Same thing as basketball, right? Playing basketball with your friends is the casual. NBA is the professional world. There's a tournament, but it's still basketball. Esports the same way. Are we looking at casual gaming club, or are we going to be looking at an actual roster, a league, a process in which we're going to be going through? Then we talk about developing the roadmap. What do the next 3 to 5 years look like? Often schools quickly look at 1, evaluate 1, and jump to 5. They're missing the opportunity of developing a proper roadmap, getting into the right league, getting into the right games, the right hardware to play on. They're missing the opportunity of industry, of curriculum. And what they're doing is, what we're finding is those that are jumping into this extremely fast, they want to build a room to sort of put their flag in the ground, but we're missing these other elements. There's no path for an individual to move on into higher education or into a career path. And so our process is to look at a roadmap and developing that strategically for every one of our clients. Then we talk about getting into the right game, the right league. What hardware is necessary? Are we starting as a club? Are we moving into that next level of varsity? That's step 3. Then we move on to step 4. Step 4 is now the branding element, understanding the community of esports, understanding the community in which the school district is in, or the college and the campus. But then also we want to look at the community at large. how the community is going to be embracing it, opportunities for high schools to work with colleges for a scholarship opportunity that may exist. And so branding and marketing is extremely important to understand the process of what's happening, right? What does this look like? What opportunities are there for my student? And it's not just another place for them to play games itself. And then we also want to look at curriculum. We want to brand and market the curriculum. Here's where we're looking at from an element of broadcast, content creation, marketing, the business, the economics, public relations, IT, cybersecurity. All of these aspects are part of the esports gaming industry. And then finally, we talk about, in step 5, planning and designing the facility, bringing that online with the broadcast, television studios, with the right components to build a proper, not only a proper location for the team to play and compete, but also an opportunity for students that aren't playing and competing, but working with the esports team from that industry perspective. Now, what's really interesting is we work, like I said, with over 130 colleges and universities across the board. And this is a statistic normally for them, but we feel that K-12 should understand this, right? College-going population will drop by 15% between 2025 and 2029 and will continue to decline another percent or two thereafter. And that is due to, one, the 2008 recession, what's happening with that. But what's happening is colleges and universities, their numbers are starting to even be in effect now, dropping in points. So what we're doing is we're looking at esports as an opportunity for enrollment and recruitment. We're building curriculum for them. We're helping them with developing that career path, to take existing elements and tracks that they have from a college standpoint and university standpoint and help supplement that with esports. And that means us getting in there and having them understand the new industry, while broadcast still may be the same, right? From that perspective of camera shooting and understanding rule of thirds, but how are we adopting these new platforms? How is the integration of social media and marketing working within the broadcast track and mass communications? So we are already working with so many colleges and universities, and they're asking the questions now: where do we enroll from? Where do we recruit from? What high schools are keeping track of it? Because what we see are most high schools just kind of starting up a glorified gaming lab. And yeah, they may be competing to some capacity, but what is their process? And so these colleges and universities are looking towards us, and that's why we have a really strong push with Troxel CDI to not only help develop the program, but to build a robust program that's surrounded around not only the right games and leagues to play, but also the hardware specifications, the curriculum, and a path for industry. Now, to give you guys a little bit of an idea of what is happening and the offerings that are happening out there from colleges and universities and tournament winnings, $19 million in scholarships were given out last year. 19 million, and that is going to grow this year. It's been growing year after year. This is where we're seeing colleges and universities offer full rides themselves. I just came back from Oklahoma, and from Oklahoma, working with several different colleges right now, they have already identified what that scholarship looks like for fall of 2020, and bringing on players, bringing in those competitive players, but also with an understanding and a track of esports within their own major itself. So it's really exciting to see even that level from scholarships. So the one thing that we like to talk about is setting the standard, right? We're utilizing traditional sports as the model, and basketball, right? Basketball has its rules. It has its standard. It has the court standard. It has the ball size standard. It has the net at a certain size, and the three-point line, the free throw. All of these are standards from location to location, so teams don't have a competitive advantage or disadvantage when they're playing or traveling team to team. Well, esports needs a standard. And so our process is to set that standard, is to help with the right standard for hardware. We don't want schools that have the ability to put in a $8,000 gaming rigs, and other high schools have only the ability to afford $1,000, right? And so we want to lay out that playing field, and we want to understand what that looks like, right? And we don't want to give one team a competitive advantage or disadvantage. So when we're setting the standards, we look at it from a hardware perspective. But then we also look at it not only from a hardware perspective, but also a league perspective as well. And we see so many schools, so many states starting up their own leagues, and they're not considering the bigger picture. They're only looking at, well, we're going to start our own league, we're going to get a bunch of schools together, and then we're going to do our own thing. But what benefit is that giving the student at the end of the day? That's not looking to them, to submit their stats, to submit all of this information that the league typically would do from that process to get them into a college scholarship. And so when we're looking at this whole process, we want to look at the league standardization as well. Now, to give you guys an idea of some of the things that we've done from a hardware perspective, this is one of the reports that we offer. We sort of break it down by the game, the name of the game, the type of game that is, the CPU requirement, and this is also a CPU requirement that is going to be future-proofing you as well. How much RAM and the type of graphics card that you would need. Once again, we're looking at it from this standpoint, purchasing a machine for the next 3 to 5 years, or 3 to 4 years. That would be good from a gaming perspective. So I do want to talk about the leagues. We've talked about now hardware from a standardization and how we view that, but we also want to talk about the leagues. And we've vetted through a lot of different leagues that exist out there. But what we have found is we've narrowed it down to EGF, the Electronic Gaming Federation. The reason why is they have both not only a collegiate model, but a high school model. And so now there is a direct correlation for schools. If they join this league, there's an opportunity for them to be recruited into these schools. And these are large schools like LSU, Butler, Villanova, Rutgers, Ohio State, and the list keeps going on and on with these Division I schools that have competitive eSports teams that are competing in these large titles within the Electronic Gaming Federation. But from a high school perspective as well, we also want to create a sense of community. If we look once again at traditional sports, I remember growing up in high school having football games, right? And the city or the town over, that rivalry that existed, and the Thanksgiving Day game that happened, it was a rivalry that happened for years between these two towns. And that's a sense of community. In the esports, that gets a little difficult because we're dealing with the internet. We're dealing with individuals that could be across state lines, that could be across time zones. And when are you going to see that individual again, or that team again? When are you going to interact with them? While that does create a sense of community, it's not creating a constant sense of community. EGF has focused on that local community model. They want to build up the local community, several schools in that local community, then to a state championship, and then to a regional championship, and then finally to a national championship. And speaking of national championships, EGF is the official ESPN, Wide World of Sports, Disney High School League. Disney is backing up EGF from that perspective because they have themselves gone through leagues and they see the path from high school to college to the industry. Disney is identifying EGF as that official league for them. So we are looking more and more towards schools across the nation. While there are other leagues that exist out there, and if you are in a league already, you can continue that process. But this is an opportunity, once again, for students at a national level to even be recognized to play at the ESPN Wide World of Sports venue in Orlando. So for us, EGF is a great element into the league. But through all this, we've been talking about industry. And in order to get to industry, we have to talk about a career path. We have to talk about curriculum. And that process has to be done through CTE and STEM. And so what we've done is we have identified industry level aspects, and we broke it down. And so I have a great example here. This is an arcade console. Not this past summer, the summer prior. At that time he was 9. My son said, "Dad, can we play Super Mario?" And I do have my original Nintendo. And I could show him all the tricks that we had done back in the day, blowing in the cartridge up and down, jamming it up and down, hitting the reset button because we thought that was the right thing to do. And I said, "Son, we're going to do something different. We're going to do something very different." I went to my CAD engineer. I had him build me up CAD drawings with a scale. And I went to the hardware store and I came home, and for a whole summer, this is what we had done. I showed him how to read CAD drawings, how to take scale and measure it out. So now he's doing fractional math. He's converting. He's looking at whatever this fractional inch is, whatever that means to a foot. And he's doing all of this measurement. I'm showing him, we're doing all the calculations and so forth. He did most of the cutting on the table saw itself, except for the curve cuts. Dad did that. He did the wood, the glue, the screwing, the nailing. I showed him how to use the air nailer. He did the majority of the staining that you see in that bottom picture. And the end result is him here playing video games. Now, there are other elements in here. There are traditional arcade buttons. We got those. I showed him we had to build a sort of little breadboard that there are packs out there that make this really, really easy. But I showed him how to tin the wires, how to prep it, how to read the lines on the resistors. He hasn't memorized Ohm's law, but I showed him what Ohm's law is, what capacitors and resistors do, and how we put them in line. So when we press on buttons and relays, it's triggering something. But then there's also a Raspberry Pi running the whole thing. There are emulators, once again, that make this really simple. But I wanted to make this a lesson for him. So we did if-else conditional logic statements. I showed him how to build programming. So when he pressed a button in a particular game on a particular console, it married up with the function of that console, whether it was Nintendo, Super Nintendo, or Genesis. And so the buttons change based on the game, and that's all conditional logic. The end result is playing video games, but through that, he learned architectural understanding, reading drawings. He learned how to use his hands, woodworking, right? Understanding all of that. He understood electrical engineering, soldering techniques, tinning wires, building breadboards, understanding resistors, capacitors. He had an introduction into coding and programming. At the end of the day, it was playing games. It was something that motivated him. But through that, he's learning industry principles. He's learning something that will set him up for a career path that is growing exponentially year over year, being over $135 billion revenue industry. This industry is looking for talented individuals. And so what we've done is we work with curriculum directors, we've worked with educators, we've pulled them in, we've worked with industry professionals, and we've identified really some high-level understanding of what the industry needs, from media content, business and the public relations, or the IT and the computer science. And from there, it keeps getting bigger into sports management. It gets into cybersecurity. It gets into development and coding and software development, broadcast, streaming, graphic design. All of these are elements surrounded around the esports industry. And so what we have done is we have sat down with these individuals from an industry standpoint, asking where the industry needs individuals, and working with a curriculum team. Marrying the two together, we have developed a full 4-year academy style, a track style of a curriculum that is CTE standard certified from national CTE course standards from that perspective. Right now, we are looking at ISTE standards. It is going through the process of being vetted through ISTE from that particular perspective. But I just want to show you a little bit of a snapshot of how we break this down from a 4-year perspective. And these programs get larger, right, depending on which track that you move in. But the first year is multimedia, introduction. This gets you a understanding of the landscape. Everything from the filmmaking or storytelling, which is part of software development and programming, to the production side, television production of shoutcast and streaming, to the social media elements themselves. When that comes into play of how to market and beginning the understanding of marketing and advertising through social media, And then finally, the gaming element. So from programming, software development, to the actual esports industry and from that perspective. Then from there, a student can choose the path in which they want to move in. If they want to move down the software programming path, and they want to do the graphic design element, you do need to take film production, because now you need to understand camera angles and storytelling and storyboarding. Plus, you also need to take a coding class, and then potentially into one of the other gaming platforms like Unity or the Unreal Engine. And so these are pathways that are going to be established for these students. Or let's say you want to go down the production element and you want to go into shoutcast streaming. So now you need to take a television one class as well. And through that, you want to do shoutcast and streaming and statistics and play-by-play. Well, make sure you're taking a statistics math course in your second year of high school. Then your third year of high school, now you move into eSports and the gaming track specifically, right? Now you're learning about shoutcast and branding and taking these elements that you learned prior and slowly rolling this out. So there are many different ways that an individual in the industry can move from, like I said, graphic design and working with film and working with storylines, shoutcast, streaming, IT. One of the things that's great is we have been working with Acer. And what is really exciting with Acer from a curriculum standpoint within our IT curriculum is we are introducing a DIY computer. Basically, this is going to be a PC, a computer that's all apart. Nothing is together. It's going to be part of the curriculum. And so it's in parts, it's in pieces, and there's a whole curriculum guide. That will then be a machine that can be used for graphic design, for the film class, for Unity programming, or for the esports team. So we're looking at it from multiple different angles to utilize hardware, not in just one specific element. So when we're building a facility, things that we consider, right? We've gone through the steps, right? We've identified the mission. We talked about roadmap, making sure we're planning for the next 3 to 5 years. We talked about getting into the right league. We just talked about curriculum and that aspect. But now we need to talk about step 5. And step 5 is building a facility. And through that, we want to look at competition space. Hourly gaming revenue is an opportunity for most colleges and universities because they have more of a campus-wide community concept. But then we want to consider shoutcast and streaming centers. We want to make sure that there are elements of broadcast and the curriculum is being brought into the room. It's not just a gaming lab. And that's what we see in most cases. We want to broaden that horizon from that perspective. We want to look at team practice areas where the team can go back and look at the replay files of the game to see how well they did or what they need to work on as a team from a strategy standpoint. And finally, these rooms bring a level of increased student participation and involvement. There is a massive community out there that is not involved in traditional sports. They don't go down that path. It's not their passion. And most of them come from a creative background or from the gaming background, and they really enjoy this level of interaction. This program will bring forth those individuals to give them a place to work together, to strategize together. It'll give them an opportunity to be a part of a team, to do something of interest. And so there is a massive community that is out there that is a gaming community that loves watching video games, that loves playing them, that has favorite players and teams that exist. And now we can give them an opportunity to work together. No matter what walk of life you're on and from any demographic, it is really a great melting pot that brings so many individuals together. And so when we look at facility planning, this is one of the high schools that we have developed from a broadcast standpoint. But this gives a platform for development of not only a broadcast, but an esports element, where 25 students, which is what it takes to run this particular program, now are involved in play-by-play, calling shots, looking at the players and where they are, getting statistics. That's an LED wall in the back that says the current OC on it. They could put player stats up live when they do the play-by-play, or they're going back between halftime, between all these elements. This is how the industry works. And high schools are building facilities that are surrounded around broadcast streaming, content creation that will give them an understanding of those industries, but also an emphasis of esports within inside that as well. And then one thing, this is actually where I am right now. I'm broadcasting out of this particular room. We've done themed rooms, but the reason why we want to show this is not that we can do theme rooms from developing, and all that wood and stone is foam, everything that you see other than the deer. Everything that you see there, the chandelier at the top, that's all foam work. We do all the painting, we do all the design work. While we do that, there is technology in here from a broadcast standpoint, right? We've got cameras. One camera you can't see, it's off-site. I mean, that camera is, $20,000. But then there's other cameras in there that are on the wall that are around $300. And so we're showing this particular room to not only show the theming capability, to make it look more than just a lab at the end of the day, to give it a home and a feel of esports or a theme, but is to show that there is really simple technology out there that we can bring into play from a streaming, shoutcast, broadcast standpoint that isn't going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a whole big television studio. So that's something that we're really excited about to show in this process. So to summarize here, we have 5 steps that we look at. 1, Troxel CDI, esports integration, and Horizon AVL want to help you define your mission for esports. We want to help you to develop your roadmap, plan this out, look at the opportunities, not just from a gaming lab, but from an esports industry and career path. Step 3 is to get you into the teams then, to get you into the right leagues. If you're already into the leagues, we would evaluate that. Are you in the right league? Have these leagues identified the right path for scholarship opportunities? Or is it just a bunch of schools getting together and developing their own league, and they haven't thought through all the right tournaments that need to play? Are you looking at the national stage where someone like EGF and Disney is backing up that league? And then we look at the branding and the curriculum. What does this look like? How do we develop the faculty, the staff to support it? When we're looking at a marking period breakdown, making sure that it meets all the requirements from a CTE national standard, and giving these students a career path and scholarship opportunity to higher education and into the industry. And then finally is our last step is the facility, the plan, and the design element. And so with that,